Invincible returned to Amazon Prime this week with a brand new episode entitled Neil Armstrong, Eat Your Heart Out. I'm Cape Joel, and this is the video series where I give my thoughts and feelings on the episode that was, as well as shouting out any comic book Easter eggs or references I might find. So with that in mind, let's hop into the new episode, shall we? So then, after 3 episodes in a row of being pretty damn slavish to adapting the stuff from the comics, this new episode actually takes some time to go off book. We get a little bit of tomb raiding as a guy tries to resurrect an evil ancient mummy. You know, classic comic book fare that doesn't actually come back again for the rest of the episode. We also get treated to some more super training this week with Mark and his dad. I love the idea that in this world having powers doesn't mean you don't also have to work out. Superpowers are like a muscle, and if you don't train them, they'll atrophy. Yet another way in which Invincible as a series does great to deconstruct the idea surrounding the comic book Superman. Heck, Omni-Man even mentions his own parents, something the book never actually managed to touch on despite how long it actually ran for. This is just one of many ways that the series goes out of its way to really try and humanize and sympathize Omni-Man in a way that I really wasn't expecting, but more on that later. Debbie also found herself in an interesting subplot this week too, as Olga, the wife of the Red Rush, wants her to sell her house before she eventually moves back to Russia. Olga very much thinks that there's a conspiracy going on with the Guardians' murders and their friends at the Global Defense Agency. At first, Debbie doesn't know what to believe, but we as the audience knows that Olga is actually 100% right. It's also interesting to note that in the show, Debbie is already a self-actualized working woman, where in the comic, she only got her real estate license after a terrible personal tragedy that is still probably coming her way in the future of the show, but no spoilers. Omni-Man also dismisses these conspiracy claims to his wife, saying that Olga drinks too much, which again very much feels like a bit of signposting for Debbie's future, assuming that the show follows the comics to the letter. All of this also means that paranormal detective Damien Darkblood can be a much more involved player in the show's version of the story, where in the comics his involvement was brief at best. That also means we get more Clancy Brown, which is a plus for any show anytime. Mark's love life continued to develop this week as he got himself another date with Amber. A compliment I've actually been seeing a lot of other people give the show is that this version of Amber actually has a lot more personality than comic Amber, and that trend continues here as we discover that she actually volunteers in her free time, showing that she lives up to heroic ideals all her own without having powers. We also pick back up with the Mauler in this episode not long after his escape, and hot damn, a Vampire Weekend song and a Run the Jewels song all in the same episode. The budget for Invincible must be through the frickin' roof. Then again, when you got Amazon money to throw around, you're gonna throw it around. Now in another subplot, we see the new Guardians of the Globe take up residence in their deceased predecessor's base of operations. Robot is still keeping secrets from the rest of the team, and we also see him get quite protective of Monster Girl. Again, in the comics, these two actually ended up having a very long and interesting relationship, and the show kinda seems to be speeding that up, as well as Robot's turn to the dark side. In fact, that's one of the few complaints that I did actually hear from a lot of people about the first 3 episodes, and that is the show seems to be moving along at a breakneck pace. Personally, I don't know how I feel about it just yet. I think one of the cool things about adaptation is that you can actually pick and choose what storylines you think are more important, and if the makers of the show think that some stuff should happen sooner, then well, I can't fault them. Ultimately, Mark ends up getting himself roped into chaperoning a space mission to Mars when his father turns down an offer from Cecil. This would seem to be part of a bigger plan to get Omni-Man off planet so they could investigate him further for the murders. But Nolan is too clever and too paranoid to take the bait. This leads to a pretty compelling little conundrum for Mark, too, about what kind of hero he wants to be, especially in a world where so many different people are going to be telling him how to use his powers. Eventually, he says that he will go on the 2-week space field trip, even though it could threaten his new budding relationship with Amber. It's actually Adam Eve, of all people, who gives Mark some much-needed talking to about dating while being a superhero and all the extra little life-changing decisions that they're going to have to take into account. They're not at the point in their relationship where Mark feels comfortable enough revealing his super identity to Amber, and even if he did, that would change absolutely everything, so he's got to be damn certain that she's the one. With Mark away in space for 2 weeks, Nolan and Debbie decide to take this chance to try and talk through their issues and rekindle their relationship, which has hit the skids recently. J.K. Simmons really does manage to do some amazing acting here. We know he's the bad guy, we know he's secretly a killer, and yet at the same time, your heart breaks for him. What with the marital issues he's having with his wife. It's a crazy tightrope act to walk, but he walks it expertly. Mark fails to impress right out the gate on his first space mission. He falls asleep and ends up losing the 4 astronauts he was supposed to be babysitting. This also means he ends up coming face to face with the Martian race, which we already knew existed because of Martian Man of the Guardians of the Globe. And why yes, before you even have to ask, these Martians do indeed speak English, because English and Martian are the same language. This is actually a joke that carries over from the comics, in case you were wondering. Turns out Invincible has come to the planet at an interesting time, as the Martians are warring with another alien race called the Sequids. Think little starro parasites that can take people over. The only problem is they can't take over the Martians because of their shape-changing DNA, but they could easily take over these human astronauts, and if they did, it would spell the end of Mars and probably Earth too not long after. Not really thinking the ramifications through, Invincible is forced to cause a little intergalactic incident when he tries to save the humans, though because he didn't think to cross his T's or dot his I's, there's a very good chance this threat is far from over. Cecil also ends up showing his true colors to this episode by the end, opting to banish Damien Darkblood back to hell. Oh, he knows full well that Omni-Man has been lying to everyone this whole time, but he doesn't like Darkblood making waves, and so until he knows for certain, he's gonna send him right back to hell, showcasing just what a morally gray individual he is. Though in the end, Darkblood may actually have the last laugh over everybody, as he seems to have left Debbie something to find, no doubt a piece of evidence that will blow open this investigation with Omni-Man. And so that was Neil Armstrong, Eat Your Heart Out, and I gotta say, I am amazed and bowled over by just how much show there actually is in the Invincible show. Multiple storylines, multiple characters balancing different tones, different themes, and different ideas at any given time, and yet it doesn't feel schizophrenic like it could. The show might be called Invincible, but it's really about the entire world that Mark Grayson inhabits and the people who live in it with him and, you know, affect him and make him the hero that he is. There's talk that Season 2 of Invincible has already been greenlit by Amazon. I mean, really, why wouldn't they? I just personally wonder if we're going to get to see all of these different seemingly unrelated stories collide at the end here of Season 1, or if some of these storylines are just going to remain as spinning plates. For what it's worth, though, I did enjoy this episode, and I'm sure you will all enjoy it too.